I'm Shreya Verdi, representing the youth of Coventry and the UKSCN. Last month, on the 15th of February, 10,000 students from across the UK protested against a lack of government awareness, action, or concern on our imminent climate crisis. Today, on the 15th of March, we stand again in solidarity with young citizens in 123 other countries. Across the world, we've been excluded from participating in the fight against the climate crisis and have been left with no other choice but to take action ourselves. With only 12 years left until we reach our limit, I don't want to live in a world that values green paper over trees and decides to call that progress. Fame and glory over awareness and understanding, money and politics over the earth that we stand on. Well, today, we take a stand as the generation that will be hit the hardest. Where adults have turned a blind eye, we have to rise, opposed by many. But what option did we have when the ones causing the ecological breakdown have waited this long? Organisers of the strikes in Germany, France and Belgium have met with major political leaders, such as Emmanuel Macron and Mayor Anne Hidalgo. Greta Thunberg has already spoken at the World Economic Forum and the UN COP24 climate conference. The UK must now show its commitment to addressing the climate crisis and immediately reform the policy that is currently failing to keep us below the emissions target. This is something that starts with us. This is something that if Coventry Council is willing to talk to us about, we can help make an impact. I'll now pass on to Millie Hilditch-Gray, who'll take us through the official statement issued by the UKSCN.
Okay, so as Shreya said, we're part of an organisation called the UKSCN. This is the official letter that was written by them to address the government and all politicians. On 15th of February, students across the UK went on strike to publicly demonstrate that we will no longer be forums under the UN but we, the students, must be listened to. We challenge all political leaders. Sincerely, the UKSCN.
Hi, my name's Ellie O'Brien and I met these girls for the first time in person today. But I think climate change is one of the few issues that isn't singly caused by one person or group of people. It's one of the few issues that everybody has something to do with it. Every single person on this planet, all 7.5 billion of us, contribute to climate change. No matter what you say, everyone does something and everyone can do something to reduce it. And as we're at this point with this 12-year ultimatum, once we hit that and we've not done anything, it's your fault, it's everyone's fault. Everyone who didn't do something, everyone who continued to use plastic straws, everyone who continued to use the same carbon emissions that they used to, it's everyone's fault, which is why everyone has to come together to do something about it. Everyone can do something, even if it's small, but when we all come together, we can make a big difference. Thank you.
Ideas that we had for the council in terms of just implementing a few changes to our city that would help, implementing an environmental council that communicates with the council in every school to make sure that as an education system and as the younger generation, we can work towards helping Coventry to become carbon neutral and helping with recycling and stuff like that, things that are going to really make an impact globally.
Tell us your name.
Edward.
Okay. Go on.
In a school, I think one of the most important things to do in schools is try and make more people aware about how important the environment is, because everybody knows that there will always be a few people who don't understand the seriousness of the situation. Some people will just think that it just means there's a little bit of rubbish here and there. But in reality, what some people don't get is that it goes way, way, way beyond that, and that everything. Lots of things could end up really bad if people aren't made aware of this environment and nobody does anything to stop it.
Well done.
So, as a result of us organising these strikes, we had a meeting with our head teacher. We're at Finham Park School. We had a meeting with our head teacher to basically tell the school that this is what we're doing on the 15th. And we also have, along with the demands that we are presenting from the UKSCN, we have some things as a school that we'd like you to change and implement. Because, you know, it starts small.
Yeah.
We can do it within our institution.
What were the changes that you want the school to do?
We have a list of demands.
Good.
So, our first thing that we proposed was to start a dedicated eco team that the school council can then work with. So we can work on recycling, making sure there are recycling bins around the school site, because although we have had a lot of patronising comments about this and just people saying that it's not really going to work, at least if people are given the option to recycle, it's a start. Exactly.
This is the council's idea of disposing of rubbish. There's no way that we've got separating recyclable from non-recyclable. They've never heard of that idea. Warwick University, everywhere you've got 2 sets of bins. I mean, that's one of the simple things that the council, you could suggest, would do.
Another thing that we suggested was to get the school canteens to stop using disposable food containers. We have plates, we have metal utensils, but for some reason, every single lunchtime, you just have paper plates being handed out left, right and centre, plastic utensils that people then take outside of the canteen and litter around the school site. Polystyrene cups and plates as well. And the action that the school has already taken against this is to put up signs around the canteen telling people not to take them outside and not to litter, instead of just deciding to get rid of the disposals altogether. Another thing that's a massive issue in schools and institutions as well is there are students like us here that truly care about this stuff and they're passionate enough to come here and voice their opinions, but it's a general theme that there's this massive stigma about being different. And so if you have these beliefs and you have these passions and you voice them, you're suddenly an outsider. You don't fit into the social norms, and you're then written off as somebody who's not socially acceptable, somebody who shouldn't be listened to, and somebody who should be ridiculed. And I think that by forming student councils and student bodies that really push this message and can get it through to everybody else in the school, we can slowly start breaking down this stigma and getting people to voice their true opinions.
And to the governments and to the corporations.
Yes, there is a complete difference between there's so much that we can do and then we need to push for bigger changes. So small changes will lead to bigger changes. So you might sit and think, well, what's me not using a plastic straw going to do? But when everybody starts to do that and everybody becomes accustomed to that idea, people will then become more available to make bigger changes, so then everything will become a lot easier. So then more people will be like, well, maybe then we should make bigger changes to aid our small changes, it's like a domino.
Could I just make a comment there? I think you're absolutely right, and I wanted to say just that point. But by making small changes, you start to develop your own awareness of the bigger changes that are needed. But I think that alongside those small changes, you should also be studying and learning, because that will help you to widen your vision and understand what's needed.
I think there needs to be a lot more education in schools around it, because there's a lot of people, especially in my year, that don't care for it because they don't know the actual impacts that it's going to have.
But not everybody goes to school. Quite a large number of children in this country and around the world that are home educated, and yet they know about this stuff. So it's about education. Education doesn't have to happen at school. You can educate yourselves when you're not at school. It doesn't have to be their responsibility to educate and make you aware of what's going on in the world.
People don't want to put the effort in where it isn't needed. They won't go away and research these things. They like the information fed to them, which is why having this education in school as a compulsory part of the curriculum will work, because then people have to learn about it. It's something that school kids will get educated on, and it'll become normal.
Teach people how to teach themselves.
That's off that interest and passion in students.
Can I also respond to that as well? I think by starting more eco groups like you suggested, I think is a way to reduce the stigma. In fact, my school actually has a dedicated eco group. They're called the Eco Committee, and I've worked with them on numerous occasions, and they've already actually done a lot to help with problems around school, like they've installed plastic bins. And since their establishment, we noticed a change in attitudes, an attitude of people more willing to actually talk about the environment and talk about climate change. So having more eco committees in other schools will allow to facilitate that change in attitude to a more favourable attitude of everyone doing their bit to stop climate change.
We are kind of the minority in schools. Personally, I have faced a lot of mocking and stuff being said about me because I'm doing this. And I think if we had assemblies, say we had lecturers like yourself come in and just not force it onto people like you said, but just make them aware, because most people in schools don't actually know about what we're doing, and which is why there is such a bad stigma around it from our own peers. And if we had assemblies where just literally telling people the facts and what they can do to help can really
in an engaging way as well.
I guess the mindset to try to have, and I think you summed it up nicely, is to try to engage people in a way that can access their interests. So maybe framing climate change as a big global kind of thing, there's lots of catastrophe going on, might not be the way, but to think about how you can connect to people's lived experience. So why would it matter to a kid in your school from Coventry as opposed to the content?
I mean, you're a super engaging lecturer. Absolutely. We need more people like you. But maybe as well, if we as a student body take this forward, certainly because we are of the target age in getting this message out, I think we can certainly try and educate more kids in schools and really, really get a passion going behind this movement.
I think we'd be privileged to be invited.
Yeah. Even if, because we were talking about forming school councils, we could also use those school councils if they are all around Coventry and communicate back with the council on what changes are being
is it
implemented.
useful to have the local ward councillors involved in that? Because because you're talking about people being there, corporate assemblies, that's fine. But what about the ward councillors? Because one of the issues we have at schools, problems outside schools, for instance, people parking in the wrong places, but we should be more involved and engaged with the schools. So maybe ward councillors, and everyone has a ward councillor. It's just one way of engaging.
Yeah. Perhaps the meeting, so like once every so often, here, where the councillors actually do come,
Well,
Well, you're here, yes.
Well, I don't think people really care about things until it directly affects them. Like Foxford, for instance, no one really spoke about knife crime at all until we had when one of our students was killed. And when that happened, you see the school change completely, how everyone now feels strongly about knife crime. And I think it's the same thing here, where when these 12 years are up and climate change directly affects us, that's when people are going to start caring about it. But then by that time, it's going to be too late anyway, and so we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So I think when people think about climate change and global warming, they think of Antarctica. They think of Antarctica melting. They think about the polar bears. We don't think about how in the years to come, this is going to have a direct impact on us and on humanity itself. And I think that's the thing we've got to bring up. And like they were saying about the media, there's a saying that says whoever controls the media controls the mind. And the reason Brexit and knife crime is such a big thing is because the internet and the media make it a big thing. And I think if climate change is made a big thing in the media, everyone will think it's a big thing, and everyone will then start making a change.
What should the message be that we're sending to Coventry City Council? Are we creating a petition? Are we asking them to put litter bins out? Are we asking them to have a climate emergency declaration? What do we ask?
A youth climate group.
Yes, that's what we want.
The council.
That's what we want.
And then to represent you. You
Well,
represent
your
yourself
idea was to have one in
perfectly,
every school, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But if they had a council in every school, then representatives from each school
To come together
Okay.
with the council.
I think a dialogue needs to be had between different schools, because
Definitely.
like then other head teachers can speak to each other, because obviously your head teacher seemed pretty sort of
Very proactive, really.
yeah about it, and if like head teachers from the city could speak to each other about this issue, it can like make sure that people are more involved from all the different schools in Coventry, and the council could help with that just by making sure that all the schools were working for the same issue together.
Because our head teacher especially found it very hard trying to authorise our absences for this and trying to actually implement some action, because it's something that's never really been done before.
Yeah.
I think if you declare it as a state of emergency, that will get the attitude to change. You know, when we called it global warming, that honestly that didn't have enough negative connotations. You know, people thought, oh, it's warming, it's not just gonna be a bit inconvenient. If you describe it as an emergency, people might think, oh, now it's coming, now it's going to change. So it's the words that we use about it will change the attitudes that we have.
Yeah, climate crisis.
Yeah, crisis.